I now have the file open in Adobe Camera Raw, and it is, as it opens up, it as shot. And the first thing we're going to do is go over to the camera calibration and set the profile. So you can see it's fairly normal color, but when we go ahead and bring it the actual profile for the camera, you can see how the colors are now really just jump alive. It just made a nice little jump there, and things will work a lot nicer. You have to move the sliders a lot less if we actually apply that profile from the very beginning. We'll start on our first tab, and I feel like the exposure is looking pretty good. If we needed to check our blown out areas, we can see the histogram's looking good, but if I held down my Option key or Alt on the PC and I started moving my exposure slider around, you can see the areas as the histogram moves up or down. You can see if I move it up a little bit, you can see areas that are coming in that would be past 255 on the scale of 0 to 255. They're going to be above 255. So we want to just kind of bring that back to where we started, and just to show you that we can check for those areas. Same thing with the shadow areas. I'll hold down my Option or Alt key, go to the blacks, move the sliders around, and it'll show me areas as I bring that up, areas that are past 0. So in this case, we just want to start by leaving it down where it was. The exposure looked pretty good from the very beginning. Might just move it up just a little bit right there. Kind of just a little kick to it. Sometimes I'll add just a little touch of contrast. That's a little too much on the exposure. I like to go in the order of exposure and then blacks, and then if I need to, use recovery. In this case, I don't feel like I need any recovery, and I don't really need any fill light. If you did, you can see it's like adding a little fill light from the camera's point of view, just popping in a little fill, but I don't want to fill it in too much, so I'll just bring that back down. I usually add just a little bit of clarity, which is just a little kick of mid-tone contrast. I want to double check my sharpening. My sharpening is all set for the amount that I normally use for my product photography. And I'd like to double check my output options here, my workflow options. And we have 4 choices, of course, on our color space that defines our color. I like Adobe 1998 for when I'm doing inkjet printing, just standard digital photography that is not really for reproduction in a 4-color press, but just good clean reproduction. I like Adobe 1998. If I know I'm going to the web specifically, I will go to sRGB, which is very good generic color space for average monitors that are not profiled. If I'm doing my fine art work and I want to get the most color out of something, I can use ProPhoto, but it is a larger color space that can be reproduced, so I'm very careful not to use that for reproduction photography. And if I know that I'm going into some type of 4-color output, meaning it's going to be converted into CMYK in the end and used in a brochure, a magazine, going on a 4-color press, then I'm going to use Color Match RGB. It is the best space for that. It is going to give me the less change when I go from RGB to CMYK. So I'll leave that in Color Match RGB, and we will decide if we're going to do any work at all on the actual tones or levels after the fact, then I want to be in 16-bit, because I don't want to be changing my levels and curves in an 8-bit file because it's very damaging. In this case, I've really got the file exactly the way I want it, so I can stay in 8-bit because 8-bit is the file that I'm going to give to the final client. We want to keep the files a little smaller for the reproduction. It's going to be a lot simpler for them to handle. I won't have to change it. But I do have to emphasize, if I know that I'm going to go in and play around with levels and curves on the file after I'm coming out of Camera Raw, then I will definitely be in 16-bit. For demonstration purposes, I think we're okay for 8-bit. I'm going to stay at 300 pixels per inch. We want to use twice the pixels per inch as the line screen of the printing press. In most cases, the printing presses these days are around 150, they're usually 133 to 150 line screen, so 300 is a very safe resolution for that. We'll hit OK. I think we're all set to go. We'll go ahead and open up the image. Okay, the first thing I'll do is just hit my F key once to get me into my full screen mode here. And I'm looking at it, I'm liking the overall exposure. I see just a couple of minor things that I need to do. I see a little bit of something hanging out over the side of the purse here, a little piece of material that needs to be cloned out real quickly. I don't like the shape of some of the straps. It's just a little bit odd, a little bit warped looking, so we're going to liquefy some of that. And I see a little bit of a dark area right here that I don't particularly care on this strap. I don't mind having some black in the strap, but because we have a fill card here reflecting into the whites, picking up the specular highlights on the purse, I didn't want to overfill this. I like the fact that this falls off dark, gives the purse a little bit more shape, but because it falls off, we have this area where there is no card, and of course the main light is over in this area. We do have one blank area that we're going to need to clone in just a little bit right here. So the first thing is, let's go ahead and fix these straps. I don't need to open up the entire file in Adobe Camera Raw, in the Liquify. So let's go ahead and just take our square marquee tool and draw a marquee selection around the area that we really want to work on, and we will go to Filter, Liquify. Now, I see this area is opened up here. I can see this area needs to be pulled away a little bit, and this area needs to be pushed back in. This area needs to come out. So the first thing is this area right here. I think we're going to go ahead and just push that in a little bit. I don't need to protect too much yet, because this area will have to protect a little bit. But right here, I'm going to move my brush density. I'm going to move it about 75. Close enough, 74, 75. And I'm going to keep my brush pressure pretty low. I'm going to use a fairly large brush, and let's see how this works. I'm going to come in and I want to put the center point of that brush in here, and I'm going to slowly move this in, little short strokes. And I want to do it I'm going to keep repositioning it and removing it in. It's not something I want to do with a big, fast, one big movement. I'm slowly moving it and reshaping this guy. I know it doesn't look like it's moving much, but it is moving very slowly, and it's just kind of coming in and reshaping that a little bit better right there. I like that. Okay, maybe up a little bit right here, and in a little bit right. Oops, a little bit right in here. And if I feel like I got a little dead area there, I'll make the brush smaller and sort of pull that out just a little bit right there. Okay, that's good there. Now, this area is too close to this part of the strap is okay, but this is not. So let's take our freeze tool, make our brush a little smaller, and we're going to freeze a big part of this purse so we don't actually get in here and hurt anything. I'll make my brush a little smaller, and I'll come in here, and if we bump anything, we can always fix it with our history brush back. But I'm going to go ahead and just freeze that area so we don't actually move that strap. That's a good amount of protection for us right here. Actually, let's make our brush a little bit bigger, and we'll just stroke that in here real good. Okay, now let's go back to our tool here, and we will start to pull this out. And it's starting to come together. I'm getting a little bit of misshapen a line here, which we're going to fix in a second. But this is looking pretty good. Just getting that shape out just a little bit. Now I can take a much smaller brush, and I'll move in a little closer here. And I'll start just shaping that just a little bit better with a smaller brush. Now that we've got the main part pushed out. Just little teeny details like that. So we're coming in here, we're pulling that out, and we're making this shape much more shapely. And we'll go back down a little bit. And I think it just needs a little bit right in here to shape that out, and a little bit right in here. Okay, now we've got that set. We'll hit OK, and we'll see before and after, before, after. Before, after. You can see just a little bit better shape on there. So I'm happy with that. The next thing I need to do is, I don't like this shape, this little bit of black area right here. Because we left a card out, we have the area that we shot through. I didn't want to overfill this because I like the fact that the purse has a fall off. It gives me shape, and I'm going to go ahead and first I'll go to my pen tool. I want to go ahead and make a selection around that area, but I'm going to use my pen tool to do that. It's a lot easier for me than trying to use a lasso or something like that. I can put one point down, and I'm just going to start dragging through here And I want to create a selection around this area, just the area, that main part of that black part. I don't need to get rid of all that black. I just need to get rid of some of that so my eye doesn't jump right to that area. So once I have that done, I'll go over to my path panel. I will hold down my command key or control on the PC, click that, turns myself into a selection so we can see that we are now basically protected there. So I'll go to my cloning tool, and I'm going to option click, make sure we see our options here. I'm going to be on 100% opacity and a fairly low flow, and I'm going to sample an area from right in here and start just bringing that up through here. Just see if I can bring just a little bit more gold so my eye doesn't kind of go right to that area right in here. And it's not necessary that I replace all the black. I just want to make sure that there's not a lot of that so that my eye goes directly to it. And it's kind of like it pulls your eye to that dark area. So I'm just kind of coming in here, maybe pull some of this down in here. And that's filling myself. It's much, much better, much cleaner. If it's a little bit too much black in here, I could always just fill in just a little bit right there. Just sort of thin that line down a little bit. That's looking good. So I'll back that up a little bit. And I see some areas over here, same kind of thing. Now another way we can do this is to create a pattern and clone from a pattern. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to just take a marquee tool and draw a small little pattern of just that color right there, and that's going to be defined as a pattern. I'll go to Edit, Define Pattern, call it pattern number 2. And I want to hold on my Option or Alt key, click onto my tool and change it to the pattern cloner, and I can see right down here it's my last pattern that I chose. I'll deselect the area, and I'm going to go ahead and just start cloning in here. Now let's just check our brush settings first, because my brush settings are not the way I want yet. I like to take off the brush shape because I don't want it to start with a small point and go to a larger. I want it to be the same overall. So I take off my unclick that. I leave it on smoothing. And I'm going to just make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to use a full opacity but a lower flow, and just start, actually Command Z that, and I'll a little smaller brush, and I'll just start kind of bring in a little bit of that pattern in here, and just fill in just a little bit of that black area right in here. And if I need to, I think my brush needs to be a little sharper, so I'm going to just make it a little harder brush, so it's not such a soft edge. Isn't actually working for what we want. So that's good there. That's much better right there. And the same thing right in here. I'll just fill in a little bit right on this area. Right on this area, right in here. Just fill that in just a little bit. And I could fill in just a little bit right in here. So we just fill some of those black areas up. That's good. Now I do see some poor areas on the purse here in the back. We do want to go ahead and we would probably clone all this area out. I'm not going to take the time to do that now all the way through, but just some of the areas we would do, go back to our regular cloning tool. And I like to sample, close, but resample constantly from new areas and just start cleaning up this product in here. Come in here and just start working on this by constantly resampling, Option click, and start cleaning up some of these areas that are a little bit brown, especially like this area here. I don't think this looks too good for us here. I'm bringing it in, clone, and bringing that in with the cloning tool, rubber stamp tool. I don't like this little piece hanging out in here, so let's clean that up a little bit there. Another thing that might bother you is the black holes inside the brass buttons. So that's something else that we could clean up. We could actually go in here and just sort of clean up those a little bit and bring in some of the detail. Click, click, Option click, and just bringing in some of those over and over. And we would do that, of course, to the whole thing. Now this is a nice big broad area that I don't have anything to clone from, so I'll take an area from here and Option click here and start bringing myself in here. And if I want to do that to all the buttons, let's go ahead and unclick the line sample. So I'll click once here, and now I don't have to worry about re-clicking. It'll just kind of stay in there in the center. It'll just stay in that one area, and I can go around and kind of just fill in those buttons a little bit. I might do that down in here. I don't have to worry about re-clicking. because it's going to stay in that one area. And we would do that. Now this is a little different density, but that seems like it's still okay. We would do that, of course, here and here, and just sort of clean up the buttons. And in the end, of course, we got to do a little bit more work on all this strap here, but we'll just get the general idea that we want to go ahead and just start cleaning up and bringing that area down in here. I'll go back to line. Line sample is good now. That kind of thing, couple spots. And we would just work a little bit more on that, cleaning up those spots. But in the end, let's go ahead and crop our shot down. We'll go to the crop tool. I'll pull a nice crop, clean, and that looks pretty good there. I got nice hard shadows. You notice that it does have all the specular flex showing, but at the same time, the hard light is giving me lots and lots of texture on this kind of weaves, and the handles are a lot more smoother. It's very, very simple product shot. Only spent about 5 or 6 minutes retouching it, but the little details like that will make the client very, very happy.